I wasn't originally planning on rocking the hat for today's video, but I mean, if I'm rocking the rocket shirt, I feel like the hat is a necessity for this video. I don't know. I'm not really that big of a hat guy, to be completely honest. My head tends to sweat quite a bit, so we might be done ditching the hat later on, but that's not the point of today's video. The point of today's video is actually our subject of discussion, and that is Diancie, the princess of all Carbink. Diancie has an interesting rock fairy typing, and while it might seem kind of bad when you think about it and you just hear rock associated with fairy, it's actually really good outside of the 4 times steel weakness. And as far as Diancie's stats go, well, I forgot that Diancie is basically just a Carbink with better offensive stats as far as attack and special attack go. When I ran into a Diancie while bringing Hoopa Unbound to the ladder, I thought Diancie was strictly a special attacker, and maybe I was just thinking that because of Mega Diancie back in the day, but Diancie has the same attack value as its special attack value, so Diancie could be an interesting Pokemon to take a look at. So let's jump into the showdown window and dive a little bit deeper into that. I think she heard the word princess and got jealous because it wasn't being used in context for her. So here she is. Yeah. Anyways, Diancie is a fun Pokemon to look at. We have 3 different values, and that's pretty much it. So it's very easy to actually keep track of what this thing can potentially do. So it's got 50 HP and speed. It's got 100 attack and special attack while also having 150 defense and special defense. With a couple of boosts, Diancie can get very bulky very quickly, and it doesn't take much to set itself up. And Diancie also has a signature move that can actually help out with that. Diamond Storm. And while this name goes incredibly hard, its effect goes even harder. It's a 50% chance to raise the user's defense by 2 stages. It's base 100 power, and 50% odds feels pretty good for the fact that it can potentially raise up its defense, and also, it's a spread move. Yeah, Diancie also has a signature move that is a spread rock type attack. This thing is basically better rock slide here, and yeah, I like the idea of Diancie potentially being able to raise up its defense 2 stages, which means when it comes to investment, maybe what you might want to do, depending on how you're building this thing, you might want to invest a little bit more into your HP and special defense and allow Diamond Storm to raise up Diancie's physical defense. Now, as far as its typing goes, it is Rock Fairy, and while I said earlier it doesn't really sound the most appealing, look at its breakdown here. It is immune to Dragon while having resistances to Bug, Dark, Fire, Flying, and Normal. And it's fairly nice being able to resist both Dark and Fire because they are some fairly common coverage moves right there. And then it does have 3 weaknesses to Grass, Ground, and Water. Unfortunately, those are very common types, and it is 4 times weak to Steel, but outside of Zacian with its Behemoth Blade and Zamazenta with its Behemoth Bash, you don't have to worry about too many restricted or mythical legendary Pokemon having a signature move that is a Steel type. And on the note of restricted mons, there are a lot of Dragon type Pokemon out there, meaning there are a lot of Dragon type Pokemon that naturally have stab Dragon type attacks. And while Dragon isn't the most wide reaching, super effective coverage, it is neutral into a lot of things, so having that outright immunity to Dragon is fairly nice for Diancie to potentially switch into a Dragon type attack for a partner Pokemon. So you do have that working in your favor. And with base 150 in both of your defenses, you should be able to shrug off attacks in general with some relative ease, especially if you terrestrialize away from that 4 times steel weakness or your weaknesses to grass, ground, or water. And being able to do that could be relatively handy. Now, what else is a notable thing about the fact that Diamond Storm also raises your defense 2 stages 50% of the time? Well, the fact that Diancie also gets Body Press. So there you go. It gets the move that calculates its damage based off of the user's defense stat instead of its attack, which means Diancie can get very, very scary very, very quickly. And Diancie also gets access to Calm Mind and Iron Defense, so you could even just have the Calm Mind and Diamond Storm Body Press, and then have like a other option, like maybe say Moonblast to have that fairy coverage, and you can have something potentially scary like this. You have Body Press and Moonblast for some single target pressure, while having the Diamond Storm to potentially hit both sides of the field, raise up Diancie's defense. You got the Calm Mind to raise up your special attack and your special defense. Like, you do have that option to get scary, or you could even play to, like, say, Trick Room. Diancie is very slow. You can have Trick Room, and depending on the IVs of this thing, depending on what you have, like, you can hit a fairly slow speed stat. Like, if I remember, your base 50 speed stat on Diancie is pretty comparable to Ice Rider. Like, if you look, Calyrex Ice Rider is also a base 50 speed Pokemon. Ursaluna is also a base 50 speed Pokemon. Iron Hands is a base 50 speed Pokemon. So that base 50 speed on Diancie is actually a relatively nice speed tier. So depending on your IVs, you might have a good threat in Trick Room. And plus, Diancie can also set it up, and with a little bit of Follow Me or Rage Powder support, Diancie should be able to survive and get that Trick Room up no problem. And here's the other thing, too, for why you really don't have to worry about getting good speed IVs on this thing. Mega Diancie does not exist in Scarlet and Violet. Mega Diancie, back in the day, was terrifying, because we're going to just pull that up just so I can show you what the stats on this thing used to be. And because back in the day, like, people tried to get speed on this thing because it was base 110 speed. Now, is that the fastest thing out there? No. We have the likes of Fluttermane, Chien-Pao, Iron Bundle, Miraidon, Corridon out there now. But back in Generation 6, 110 was a fairly respectable speed stat. And while it was slower than Talonflame and Greninja, Diancie's offensive stats more than made up for the fact that it was a little bit slower than them. And it still had 110 in both of its defenses, while then jumping up to 160 in its special attack and its attack stats. Basically here, you go down in 40 points into your defenses, so 110 is still fairly bulky with screen support. You go up to 160 into your offenses, and then the rest goes up into your speed. Like, you go from base 50 speed to 110. Like, that's a very big jump, and it's a good thing back in the day dynamic speed wasn't a thing. Otherwise, Diancie could have had an extremely explosive turn upon Mega evolving. So, like, yeah, I'm kind of curious to see how Mega Diancie would work in today's format. And honestly, with Pokemon Champions, we'll probably experience that in the future. But the main takeaway here is, if you do have a Diancie with good speed and you want to use it in Scarlet and Violet right now, don't be too worried about that right now, because you can always send it to Champions later and then have Mega Diancie in the future. So yeah, just a little bit of food for thought. This feels like a good time for a tangent. Pokemon is a complex game with plenty of moving parts, thus making the game ever-changing and far more complex than you might realize. It doesn't matter whether you're simply just talking about team building or if you're actually taking part in battle. There are several moving parts that you need to take into account for, and that can be your EV spreads, your type weaknesses, your item choice, what your opponent's shirt might say. Okay, maybe not that one, but case in point, there are plenty of moving parts that you do need to take into consideration while playing the game, and thus it can be a bit complicated at times. I mean, hey, that's what makes the game so fun in the first place. But you know what doesn't have to be overly complicated and complex? Protecting your online security. And that's where today's partner, NordVPN, comes into play. By connecting to their servers, Nord encrypts your ISP, thus making your digital footprint a lot harder to trace, which is just wonderful. And on top of that, they have a built-in ad blocker, so you don't have to worry when you're surfing the web on your phone and clicking into those pesky pop-up ads with your chunky fingers. I mean, hey, phone screens are not that big to begin with, and I don't need to be seeing what my local car dealership has on sale this week. I want to see the good stuff. I want to see the Pokemon. I don't want to see what my car dealership's trying to sell me. But Getting back on track, Nord also protects up to 10 different devices at once, which is wonderful because you don't have to worry about being locked into just one singular device with your subscription plan. You can use your laptop, you can use your phone, you can use a tablet. I'm ready to go to different devices to think of. I don't really know people with 10 different devices. I don't live that bougie life. But if you got an extra phone, baby, I don't know. Listen, guys. I microwave my nachos. I am far from bougie. Yeah, we just got painfully real here. But you know what is real and also assuring? Nord's Threat Protection Pro. This is wonderful because it flags websites hosting malware and stops you from entering them, which, I mean, talk about convenient, right? You don't have to worry about your data getting stolen by accidentally clicking into a website that you might think is safe. Once, when I was doing some research for a discussion video, I actually landed on one such website, and Nord was there to stop me and said, hey, some things seem a little out of place. You might not want to use this one here, buddy. And so I backed out of it and didn't have to worry about my data getting stolen, which is just wonderful. And if that sounds enticing to you, I have good news. I have a discount link for a 2-year plan. Be sure to use my link, nordvpn.com/shucko, for a wonderful 70+% on a 2-year plan. How great does that sound? I think it sounds pretty darn good myself, but I might be a little bit biased on the matter. So use my link, nordvpn.com/shucko, to get yourself a wonderful discount on a 2-year plan. Still not convinced? Well, Nord also has their dark web monitor, which also scours the internet looking for those hideout places for those in real life Team Rocket members looking to profit off of your potentially stolen data. And if Nord does find your data out there on the dark web, it does alert you so you can take appropriate action. Use my link, nordvpn.com/shucko, to not only support my channel, but to strengthen your online security. And if you don't like it, well, Nord is all about that customer satisfaction. So within 30 days of purchase, if you aren't happy, Nord does have a 30-day back money guarantee. So honestly, where's the harm in trying it? It's a win-win for both of us. Thank you to Nord for partnering with me for this video. And thank you for checking out my link, nordvpn.com/shucko. Now, back to the video. Now, as far as Diancie's ability goes, well, it does have Clear Body, so it does protect its stats from being lowered by opposing Pokemon moves as well as their abilities. And because this is the ability and not the Clear Amulet item, you don't have to worry about knockoff, which is nice. And speaking of which, you are resistant to knockoff too, so that is fairly handy. You could have, say, a Covert Cloak if you're worried about Fake Out, and then that way too, you don't have to worry about being shut down as far as going for a Trick Room is. I said that weird. But you don't have to worry about going for a Trick Room and getting shut down by Fake Out by having that Covert Cloak. So you could have something like that. You could use a Terrain Seed. You could go for a Psychic Seed here, and then you could have, say, Indeedee as your partner. Indeedee female would be a nasty thing to have next to Diancie, since not only would it set the Psychic Terrain, it could also provide the redirection with Follow Me, or it can go for Trick Room itself. So you could hypothetically do that, and then you can have like some offensive pressure with Diancie. Maybe you go for Diamond Storm on the turn that Indeedee goes for Trick Room, or maybe you just want Diancie to go for the Trick Room, and you have Indeedee go for Follow Me. So you could potentially do that, and since people do tend to run lower speed IVs or investment on Indeedee, if your opponent wants to override the Psychic Terrain, they would have to potentially switch in Miraidon or Rillaboom to get their respective terrains up, so you might be able to get away with having that Psychic Seed as your item of choice on the Diancie instead of the Covert Cloak, and then that way too, you don't have to worry too much about Fake Out. So you do have that option. Alternatively, you could go for a Grassy Seed, pair this thing with a Rillaboom, and then that way too, you get a physical defense boost. And now at +1, you're going up 75 points minimum. Actually, you're going up more than that because with perfect IVs, you're actually sitting at 170. So you're going up more than 75 points right there at +1. And then you don't have to necessarily rely on clicking into Diamond Storm. Now you can just have that +1 and then start threatening a little bit with body press. And then if you do want to have that Diamond Storm spread option, you do have that. Or, you could also go for the Electric Seed, pair this thing with Miraidon. Now you have fast and slow. Maybe you don't run the Trick Room at all on Diancie. Maybe you have your Diamond Storm, your Body Press, and maybe we have a couple of different options. Like maybe you have Protect as a move to ensure Diancie can sustain itself a little bit. And then let's take a look and see what else we have as far as status moves go. You could hypothetically use Rock Polish to raise your speed stat 2 stages. Probably not the best on non-Mega Diancie, but I mean, it's there. You could potentially hit some scary speed numbers. Like if we take out the negative nature and actually go for a positive one, maybe what we see here, and we'll do Jolly here. We'll also bring our IVs back up. So at 77, no investment with a Jolly nature. At ×2 from the Rock Polish, you're already going up to 154. So now you can increase your speed numbers. Like if you get to 85 right here with only the 60 EVs, at ×2, you're now going to be sitting at 170 speed. If you go up a little bit further to say 100, you're at 200 speed. Max investment at 212, you're hitting 224. That's fast enough to outspeed a Shadow Rider. So Rock Polish could still be funny on this base 50 speed Mon. And plus, because I just pointed out all those Pokemon that are at base 50 speed, they might be expecting this thing to be going for Trick Room. Well, if it's built for Tailwind or Rock Polish, that's another thing too, Tailwind. If you're built for Tailwind and Rock Polish, like you should be able to outspeed and go for a lot of Diamond Storms. And with Terrestrialization, you can drop your ground weakness so you don't have to worry about Ursaluna just targeting you down with a Headlong Rush or an Earthquake. You could just become a Terra Flying Pokemon, become immune to ground type attacks. You could become resistant to ground. Maybe you go Terra Grass, or maybe you just want to be super bulky and maybe ground isn't the type you're worried about, but maybe grass and water are. You could go for Terra Steel. You could go for Terra Poison. And while Terra Steel and Poison wouldn't make you resistant to water type attacks, you would be neutral to them in the bare minimum. So maybe there's some food for thought right there. As far as some other status moves go, you do have access to the Substitute as well, so you could have Diancie just kind of hide behind that Substitute and have a setup move. Maybe you don't run Protect, maybe you run the Substitute, get that up, have the Diamond Storm, have the Body Press, and then just kind of rinse and repeat for your damaging options. So maybe you do have that. You could also have the Light Screen too to provide some sustainability on the especially defensive side for Diancie, whereas you do have that Diamond Storm, you can physically raise up your defense. Or, if you just want to reduce the amount of physical damage for the entire party, you could go for Reflect as well. And, I kind of missed it, but you get Encore. Encore could be scary off of Diancie as well, because Diancie might even just Encore opposing Trick Room on into Trick Room, and then Diancie can just kind of sit there and make the opponent waste their time right there by repeating their moves, and maybe even force the switch. So you could have that. If you wanted to, you could also have Amnesia to raise up your special defense. You can go for Helping Hand. Now, Helping Hand might be a little bit weird coming from a mythical Pokemon, but you never know. Having that option out there might not be the worst case scenario. You could have Fake Tears to lower something's special defense 2 stages. You could have Gravity to lower the evasion on things while also removing ground type immunities from some things, while also just making sure that your partner Pokemon, if their moves are a little bit on the inaccurate side, they're going to connect. So you could do that with Gravity. Or maybe you just want to loan out some of your defenses to your partner Pokemon with Guard Split and then just kind of average them out. So you could potentially do that. Like, it seems like a little bit of a waste of a mythical slot, but I mean, you could give Chansey some pretty good defense right there and then play Minimas, and yeah, we're not going to go any further with that. But point is, you do have some creative options right there as far as some status moves go. And you don't necessarily have to go for a train seed. Like the train seed is kind of a nice way of just setting up either your physical or special defenses, depending on which seed you go. But you could do some other things. Like you could go for a berry, like maybe, and just because this is coming off of Monterey, you could go with maybe a moringa berry, if I can spell it. So basically, the moringa berry would raise your special defense one stage after it's hit by a special attack. So this way, too, you don't have to be fully reliant on terrain to activate a seed. You could do something like that, or because Diancie does have that body press, you could go for the physical side with the key berry. So you might be able to do something like that, take a physical hit, and depending on how your defenses are trained with your EVs, you shrug it off, you get that physical boost, and then maybe Diancie can kind of go from there. But you probably need some recovery support with a partner Pokemon in that case, maybe whether it be Life Dew or Heal Pulse for that matter. Now, alternatively, too, if you wanted to go really crazy, you could go for an Assault Vest. Give yourself a 50% special defense boost, and maybe we'll switch this into a impish nature, or actually, you know what? Let's go for a relaxed nature. So now you have a +1 to your special defense thanks to the Assault Vest. You can't use any other status moves because of the Assault Vest. So now we can maybe look at some physical or special options. So maybe what we'll do is we'll look at some physical first because of the Body Press and Diamond Storm. Maybe what you want to do, maybe you want to take advantage of the fact that Diancie doesn't really have the greatest speed. You have Gyro Ball, there's some Steel type coverage, and Diancie can pick up some more damage the slower it is compared to the targets. And maybe what you have is, maybe you have Sand Tomb to trap your opponent. Yeah, that could be gross. Sand Tomb's not doing a whole lot of damage, but you could potentially trap your opponent, have some residual damage, and then Diancie can kind of just sit in front of something that it's got a favorable matchup into, go for the Diamond Storm, get up its defense, and then just start clicking Body Press. So maybe you do something like that. Or, maybe you just have the Endeavor option, and then that way too, Diancie starts getting worn down. You click Endeavor, you lower the target's HP, and then either Diancie itself can later finish that opponent off, or Diancie's partner Pokemon, especially if it's a much faster Pokemon, just finishes them that way. Or we just say, you know what? We're not going to look into the physical side of this. We're going to look into the special side. Maybe what you could have, you have Dazzling Gleam for some spread option. You have Draining Kiss to have a little bit of sustainability. You have some pretty decent coverage moves in Earth Power and Flash Cannon. You have Moonblast. You have Psyshock. You can potentially burn something with Scorching Sands. You do have Stored Power as well, and Stored Power wouldn't work on an Assault Vest set, but I just want to point that out because you do have the means of raising your special or your physical defense with the Diamond Storm. So hypothetically, maybe you can make something like that work on a Navy set, but probably not. That'd probably be better on a Calm Mind Iron Defense or Diamond Storm set. Actually, that kind of gives me an idea. Maybe if we take out the Assault Vest, keep the Diamond Storm, maybe we have the Stored Power, and then maybe we have the Calm Mind. This could be gross. You could raise up your special defense, your special attack. Stored Power goes up in 20 every time you get a stat boost, so Calm Mind would give you 2. So that's an extra 40 points. Diamond Storm, if you get lucky with that 50% option, there's another 2. Stored Power is now at a kind of respectable point. Like your attack and your special attack are kind of at the same point. And because Body Press is using your physical defense, you don't really have to invest into your attack stat. Like Diamond Storm could just be more of a chance to raise up your defense to the 2 stages. So yeah, that might be kind of fire, not gonna lie. I kind of like that sauce. But yeah, you could potentially do something like that. Getting back into your special category though for some moves, if you really need to get it off the field, you could have Misty Explosion on Misty Terrain, but don't do that. Do not do that. Don't make Diancie explode. It's not worth it. But yeah, Terra Blast could be some good coverage right here. You have Scorching Sands, and while it's not the hardest hitting, you get some defense boosts and some special defense boosts, and you burn something with Scorching Sands. Like, you could have some interesting combinations right there. Now, one thing that I think could be interesting is maybe Power Herb and Meteor Beam. That could be kind of spicy. So yeah, you could potentially do something like that. And let's talk some stat numbers right here. So Diancie with base 150 with a positive nature, you're going to be jumping up to 187 right out of the gate. It does not take a whole lot to raise that up to 200 points. Like, it only takes 92 EVs on a positive nature. So that could very well easily be your physical or your special defense. And I kind of like the idea of getting Diancie up to that 200 special defense minimum. You raise up your HP as high as it goes, because 50 is not a good number for HP. And then you can kind of just invest between your defenses. And I like the idea of leaving your attack stat kind of like at a neutral nature, so that you can have Diamond Storm just kind of do a little bit more damage. And maybe what you do, you can maybe put like the one extra point just so you can optimize. You don't have that leftover 4 right there. So maybe you do something like this. Maybe we just adjust it, maybe go down to 180 on the physical defense. Maybe go up to 125 for some special attack damage if you really want to. Or alternatively, you just say, I want to do more damage with body press, and I just want to have high investment into my defenses. Well, maybe you go up to your EV bump of 209 right here, invest the rest into your physical defense. You get lucky with that Diamond Storm, you hit 183 at times 2. That's getting to an astronomical number right there. At this point, the low HP is kind of not really making that much of a difference at this point. So maybe you just have that protect. Maybe you have the body press, the Diamond Storm. Maybe you have the Trick Room. And maybe you even go for the leftovers for a little bit of sustainability too. Like, maybe you do that. And that could be kind of scary. Anyways, I think Diancie is a really interesting Pokemon. It is definitely a fun Pokemon to consider using. And I think it just has a lot of opportunities to do some damage in Regulation J. Be sure to let me know what you think of this Pokemon down in the comments below, and I will certainly see you there.